welcome, Andre. It's great to have another conversation with you. I know we met before through our Narcolepsy 360 podcast season, but it's great to see you, have you on video, and just to tap into some of your expertise on food and nutrition and how we can support each other during this season of COVID whilst we're locked down at home and wrestling with symptoms of narcolepsy and also how best to eat. So thanks for giving us a few moments. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about your background, both as a chef, as an expert in food, but also as a person with narcolepsy?
Okay. First of all, my background is more so in cafeteria style settings. It was a eclectic journey for me. I started out in nursing and rehab, then I worked in a behavioral health hospital, then a emergency children's shelter. And upon moving, I changed careers and began cooking at home while I was actually recovering from achalasia, and I had got diagnosed with narcolepsy. So achalasia is a difficulty in eating and drinking, the ability to even get the food down. So for a period of time, I was literally a starving artist, and then the narcolepsy diagnosis really kind of added some interesting plot twists. And so it's like I couldn't eat, drink, or sleep properly, so I had a lot of time on my hands. I had a lot of time on my hands to basically rehabilitate myself, learn what worked for me in the situation as far as eating, drinking, even the ability to cook. I had to kind of teach myself how to cook again because I was falling asleep, while cooking and, trying to be a stay-at-home dad and juggle whatever I could contribute back into my own life.
So just to be clear, you had a diagnosis sort of like an eating disorder whilst you were a chef. That sounds terrible.
It's very ironic. I had to develop a real healthy sense of humor in the middle of all that because, I had to hide the fact that majority of the time I would try to eat something, it wouldn't successfully go down. So this was out in public. This is in private, in front of friends and family. There was a good portion of the time I was choking or aspirating. I'd have to either go run and try to remedy that situation, or there was periods in and out of the hospital, having to have emergency procedures, which led me actually moving to Oregon to have an emergency medical procedure done. So
there's nothing to do with narcolepsy. This is just a digestive issue. When did the narcolepsy kind of kick in for you?
Well, I moved to Oregon and I started a new job, and there was a lot of driving involved, and for some reason I couldn't stay awake. I was having trouble, and I didn't have enough indication prior to that there was something wrong. There was one time I was working actually, and I kind of fell asleep on my feet, and I was like, whoa, what happened? Did I just faint? But we had like a new baby. I was tired. There was a lot of things, but nothing really stood out as alarming until I just couldn't keep my eyes open on this new job. I was newly diagnosed. We moved to a new area, and it was very important that I kept the job. It was the first job I had where I could actually provide for the whole household. And I couldn't keep my eyes open. And so after my trainer, who I later found out had a sleeping disorder, he had needed to use a CPAP, and that's a breathing apparatus that helps you get oxygen. And so he said, I think you need to get a sleep study done or something because something's seriously wrong. And so I did, and they said you have textbook narcolepsy. So,
how long ago was that, Andre?
It was about 8, almost 9 years when I got diagnosed. So I was well into, the 30 range.
I was going to say your 20s. So what happened after that? You've got a diagnosis. You're in this transitional situation with work, new baby at home. lots of transitions?
Well, what happened was I had to figure out what I was going to do. I had returned to the job after seeking medical advice, and I was doing the doctor's orders, and I had some challenges, and a lot of lifestyle changes needed to happen and take place. There was just some things I had to come to terms with, and there was a lot of denial in a lot of what I was going through. I was seeking peer support and connection, and with it being rare, it just wasn't there. There weren't support groups at the time. I found that would have probably been very helpful, because at least I would have had people I could have conversated with, and even having the discussions I was having with my own family, advice to get on how to, answer some of their questions and answer some of my own.
Right. So with your diagnosis, did you move into a more full-time role as a chef, or how did your diagnosis impact your career?
Well, interesting thing happened was, I'm a fan of food. I love cooking, but I like going out to eat too as well. And so I would go out to eat, and I wanted to, more or less, I wanted to challenge myself. I had spent a lot of time with my son, and he definitely was challenging me. He wouldn't stop calling me a chef. And I was like, well, I'm not classically trained. I just, worked in the cafeteria. I never really had the restaurant background. And, you can't really explain to, it was probably then, he was about 5 or so. Can't really explain to him why you're not this great thing when everything you do to him is amazing, and in his defense, he's got pretty good taste. He's kind of a harsh critic himself. But I had met some people, and they kept saying, oh my gosh, some of these meals that you're cooking at home, you need to post that like online. Cause I would keep, some people kept pictures of their kids. I'd have like pictures of casseroles and stuff on my phone, and lasagnas and all sorts of dishes. And they said, you need to share that, and get that out there. So I did, and I got a positive response back, started developing a little bit of a following. And I wanted to challenge myself. So I asked a good friend of mine who was a restaurateur if I could basically shadow him, and if he would take me on and kind of like be a mentor for me, and I could get back into a culinary type of setting at a higher level, but without the stress of like being in Hell's Kitchen. It just wasn't what I needed. It's not really what I believe. As far as having to be in that really harsh scenario to have it be a conducive learning environment.
Yeah, so was it a career that was kind of conducive to managing your narcolepsy symptoms?
Yes, he allowed me to get into catering. And so it was high-end catering. It wasn't like coming in at the bottom rung. My first catering job, it was at the Holt Center here in Eugene, Oregon, and it's a tourist destination, and it's a beautiful structure. And so it was a high level experience and opportunity. And so I tried to rise to the occasion, and I think I did well. We matched sales. I made like some lobster mac and cheese, and one of my personal favorites, gumbo. And he does sushi burritos, and he actually helped found that whole craze. He started, it was Unami at the time, but now it's Subo Sushi. And so I've been working with him. We catered events for groups and other things locally, usually of a higher end quality. And, he helped me get my confidence back, or at least develop it.
Were you on any treatment as a sort of result of your diagnosis and then moving back into full-time work?
Yeah, I actually was on a few different medications, but when I went back to work prior to that, I had really severe allergies, and there was just certain things that didn't really work well, and I wanted to try to see what lifestyle changes I could make. When I say the things didn't work well, I mean, I felt the need. I needed to be able to take scheduled naps and do routine things that weren't necessarily allowed at work when you're on the clock. And so I started looking for jobs where I could have some agency over my time and make adjustments that way and pursue some of the culinary opportunities that started presenting themselves to me as well.
It looks like you're not at home right now. You're in a restaurant or somewhere. I love the aprons in the back. How is lockdown during COVID-19 affecting you personally and professionally?
Well, where I'm at, it's a commercial kitchen. It's Erin's Table. It's a great group. She does amazing things here locally. It's impacted me and the whole community. One reason why she's not here is because she's at home homeschooling her
Okay.
Kids, plural. And that's how it's affected a lot of people. A lot of people are
Mm-hmm.
now actually having to adjust to being at home.
Right.
And what they're going to do, not only to financially put food on their table, but also what they're actually going to put on their table.
Right.
And
Right.
the logistics of that can be challenging.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because, of course, we always eat, right? That's not changed, but I suppose there's more pressure, there's more time. Maybe that's a good thing to prepare food, but for everyone, that's not necessarily the same access to food. What do you recommend for people during this time who are just struggling with the monotony of meal planning and having to feed more people?
I would say, be a little easy on yourself. And I don't mean just let it all go, but don't feel too bad if, you have some staple things that are kind of a little bit more on the comfort food side and a little bit, maybe some sweets here and there. I mean, because it's important, one, for morale. Um, you're going to be at home and all of a sudden your children, they're going to be like professional Yelp reviewers, and a lot of people don't have like the skills, and you don't want the morale
Yeah.
at home to get so bad that
Yeah.
things are extra tense, and now you're taking on a teacher role. And some people don't have kids and they're just used to eating out. There's a lot of people who are really going to have to think more about where their next meal's coming from,
Right.
how it's going to get there. There's food delivery services, there's aid and support, financial resources in the community, groups, um, uh, social services. There's a lot of ways people are trying to connect people with resources to make sure that food scarcity isn't as much of an issue. I mean, you see it with the empty store shelves in some places. And a lot of that's because some people are only used to doing what they do. So they buy everything at the same place. They get their socks, they get their ground beef, they get their t-shirts all in the same place, and they're running out of stuff. And they're not venturing out into the community and checking out some of the smaller markets or just other places where that may not necessarily be as much of a problem. So, I'd say get creative, be patient with yourself, and explore some other opportunities that are out there, and really use this time to try to connect with community the best way that you have to be connected. Not everybody's all set up to do everything online.
Right.
But you got to get creative. I mean, everything short of cupping a string, do what you got to do to connect with people, even though you're social distancing, because someone, and it might be the kindness of strangers, or it might be your neighbor that you've never spoken to because you haven't been home long enough to even get to know who they are. So.
Are there any internet resources, or where do we go to find, these community resources? Because it's different for all of us, isn't it?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. I did send over some links that later on in the show you'll be able to provide. But I would say, as far as community resources, like for example here, the NAACP, they've partnered and they're doing free meals and giving out books and stuff to local community members. It's on a pickup basis. It's very low barrier, so there isn't a whole lot of stringent paperwork and stuff involved. You have a need, you show up, and you get service. There's been an increase in some of the EBT allotment for people who've need help with food specifically and they qualify. There's food pantries, and there's a lot of people who are actually still volunteering and using community resources in that regard to reach out, even in some of the more rural areas. There's a lot of thought happening and a lot of ways to get connected. And the first is asking, even if you can't look up online, just ask someone in your, while you're out, getting your essentials or something, find a way to, maybe have a conversation and just ask, hey, how are you doing? How are you getting through this? They might, add to your plate and give you a resource that you didn't think or you just didn't know.
Right. So long as you're not standing too close, presumably.
Right.
But so sometimes I'm in a really super rural, imagine you're in a really rural situation, don't have any neighbors. And I like, maybe need some new recipes, but also needing to kind of stay on the healthy side. Like I totally get what you're saying about comfort food, but I think like 3 months down the line, that might not go well. Other more broad resources for recipes and just inspiration, really, like doing something new. What would you recommend?
I'd say, there's online resources. There's like recipes.com. There's a few other sources. I say check them out. Check out their rating, because usually they have some sort of star rating and pictures. And even people who've attempted to make the recipes, they'll leave a review. Sometimes in those reviews, it'd be little tweaks that they've made or things that they've discovered about the recipe. But for the most part, the rating system is pretty good with that. You get really good visuals with some of them. I say like steer clear of the ones that say, cover for 30 minutes and, on a low simmer, and it's like squash, but the picture shows it all bright and beautiful and crisp. That's just not accurate. So you have to balance it out. But definitely check the ratings, because usually that's where people have utilized that and they've tweaked recipes. I love tweaking recipes and kind of making some of them my own. So I recommend people do that. Then you get personally involved too. Put your own niche in it. Find a pesto recipe you like and you want to use something different than pine nuts. Maybe you use hazelnuts. Get creative, keep yourself engaged and entertained, and it's a good way to mentally deal with what's going on by having an active participatory role in what you're doing.
Right. And for some people, and I think I'm probably in that camp where I'm not a cook at all, but actually I have enjoyed it more. I think maybe having a bit more time. At the same time, there's a concern, isn't there, for people putting on weight and being less active. What would you say to people with narcolepsy from that perspective during this time?
I would say if you have access to fruits and vegetables, some people, they have gardens. Some people are doing I'm drawing a blank on what it's called, but where you can subscribe to produce deliveries. I definitely say plant-based fruits and vegetables, and that too alone will help you be satiated longer. When I was coming up, we kind of coined this phrase, and it was you might be hungry, but are you eat an apple hungry? Because sometimes it's just the cravings that are, making you think that you're a lot hungrier than you are. Then you ask a kid like, hey, well, you want this apple? Like, oh, you know what, I'm good. They just wanted a bag of chips or something. And so that'll help you stay satiated and healthy and cut down on some of the unnecessary weight gain. And just being also involved in preparation of your food. You're burning calories. You might think they're minimal, but it's a lot better than just microwaving everything. I mean, it's a great convenience, but you get to get your hands involved. You get to move around, and also you can incorporate if you have children, having the kids, or if you have roommates, take turns. divvy things up, make it an activity, you know.
So healthy staples that we should have in our cupboards, or at least when we do go to the store, because here we can only go, you know, to the store or to the pharmacy, and only one person can go in at a time. So you feel this pressure, you know, to get exactly what you need. What are the healthy staples that we should have in our trolleys and in our cupboards at home?
I would say healthy staples would be like your beans, your rice, things that are not really going to perish. And then you try to balance that out with, like I said, the fruits and the vegetables, things that, you know, don't really require a lot of difficulty storing, you know, bananas, apples, oranges. You definitely want to get that vitamin C, things that are fibrous. So that because, you know, you might be eating more canned goods and things of that nature, you might need that roughage to kind of do what the body needs to do.
Right.
Oh, things that mitigate heartburn but are natural and not necessarily pills, like ginger is really good. I don't know if where you're at, if they have like pickled sushi ginger, but I swear that is my go-to.
That might be a reach for where I live, but I can get ginger.
Yeah, I mean, you can get ginger. Ginger is good for that. And, you know, yeah, I'd say the basics. Tomatoes, you know, things that are going to taste good and be very diverse. Like if you're trying to limit trips, do things that you can use in multiple dishes. Like if you get a roast, for instance, it doesn't have to just be a roast. You could shred it and you can have shredded tacos. You can cube it. You could do kind of a different, you know, like a stew. The crock pot. Everybody's raving about the Instapot.
Yeah.
That's fine and great how quick and convenient that is. It's, you know, sometimes it's a little more buttons to push, but the crock pot, you know, throw something in there, throw it on low and slow, and, you know, get that started at night, have it ready in the morning, and, you know, whenever your waking hours are, when you find yourself most wakeful, pull that stuff out and start prepping, you know, meal prepping. Do what you can to prepare multiple meals at a time without having to do all of it all at once. Maybe you're doing 2 or 3 meats while you have one in the crock pot. You might have something in the oven. Set a timer. And then when you do it, think about the other things you can make with it so it's not monotonous. You know, not everything has to come out of a can, and not everything has to be as repetitive. But grab like freezer bags if you can, things that are going to help store it. So maybe you're not trying to consume it all at once, but you know, preserve some of it.
Yeah, you're making me hungry. So just while we're on this sort of being resourceful and creative with our time and hopefully improving how we eat in a way that's nutritious and benefits us as a community of people affected by narcolepsy, you've also been very busy in terms of being creative and spending time doing other things. Do you want to talk to us about your new book?
Oh, yes, I would love to. So I wrote a children's book. It's a coloring book that has a story in it. It's National Poetry Month, so perfect timing for that. And it's inspired by like the old Dr. Seuss books and stuff. And Shel Silverstein, I don't know if you remember like Where the Sidewalk Ends, the quirky black and white stories. But this one you can actually color in. And so I think having activities, things like that, is a great way to, one, relieve stress, and 2, get your mind in a kind of a different space. You know, something you could do as a family activity. There's going to be an increase in required screen time, you know, for a lot of people that are homeschooling. So it's a break from that too as well.
Right.
Not just going to some other online resource for your leisure and your education and your, so have those tangible hands-on breaks are a good idea.
Do you mind just showing us again and maybe opening the cover inside?
Oh, the cover? Sure.
Yeah, let's have a look.
My son did the illustrations for it, my oldest son.
Okay.
And it was a father-son project. All my kids were involved. So they were like my research and development. And
well, congratulations.
Let's have a look here. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. That's such a great achievement. And inside, go on, just let us see what we can color, because this is such a great point.
Page because that will be a spoiler. But I'll show you one of my favorite pages.
Spoiler
I'll
alert.
even give you a hint. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah.
But
okay. So there's food in there too. Okay. Well, it looks great. Congratulations, Andre. It's such a huge achievement, and a great reminder for us to be occupied away from the screen. As you said, we're so much more on the screens, even more so now than before. So this has been a very helpful conversation, and it's always interesting to follow you on social media. I love looking at you're a photographer too, really. I mean, so to our audience, follow Andre Royal, who's got a great following on Instagram and some very inspiring recipes and pictures. But thank you, Andre, for your time.
Thank you.
It's been great chatting with you again.
Likewise.